The sound of my arm snapping echoed through the kitchen like a branch breaking in a storm. I didn't scream. I'd learned not to. Screaming only made things worse. "Look what you made me do," Sarah, my stepmother, hissed, releasing her grip on my now twisted arm. "If you just listened about the dishes." I cradled my arm against my chest, tears silently streaming down my face. The pain was blinding, but the fear was worse. At 16, I'd become an expert at hiding injuries, but there would be no concealing this. The front door opened. Dad was home early. Sarah's face instantly transformed, concern replacing rage. "Oh my God, James," she called out. "Come quick." Maddie fell while mopping the kitchen. My father rushed in, his eyes widening at the sight of my obviously broken arm. "What happened?" he demanded, looking between us. I opened my mouth, but Sarah spoke first. She was being careless with the wet floor. I told her to be careful. Her voice dripped with rehearsed worry. "It was a terrible accident." Dad knelt beside me, his face troubled. "Is that what happened, Maddie?" I looked into his eyes, searching for any sign that he might believe the truth. But I saw what I always saw, willful blindness. He'd chosen Sarah over my safety long ago. She grabbed my arm. I whispered anyway. She twisted until... "Maddie." Dad's voice sharpened. "Don't make up stories. Sarah would never hurt you on purpose." "But..." "She didn't mean it," he insisted, helping me up. "Let's get you to the emergency room." The drive was silent except for Sarah's occasional concerned murmurs and Dad's reassurances that accidents happen. I sat in the back seat, wondering how many more accidents I could survive before one proved fatal. At the hospital, Dad did the talking. My daughter fell while mopping, slipped on the wet floor. The intake nurse eyed my arm, then Sarah's perfectly manicured hands. I saw recognition flicker in her eyes before she nodded professionally. "Dr. Rivera will see you shortly." In the exam room, Dr. Rivera was different from other doctors we'd seen. She asked Sarah and Dad to wait outside, ignoring their protests. "Tell me what really happened," she said once we were alone, her dark eyes kind but intense. I fell. I repeated the lie automatically. "Maddie," she said softly, "I've been an ER doctor for 15 years. Falls don't cause spiral fractures like this. Someone twisted your arm until it broke." My throat tightened. "You can't prove that." "Let's get some x-rays," she replied, her expression unreadable. "Then we'll talk about proof." The x-rays took longer than usual. Dr. Rivera studied them with growing concern, calling in another doctor for consultation. They spoke in hushed tones, pointing at various spots on the images. When Dr. Rivera returned, her professional demeanor had hardened into something like steel. "Maddie," she began, putting up the x-rays. "Do you see these lighter lines here and here?" She pointed to several spots on the bone. "These are healed fractures, at least 4 of them, in various stages of healing. Some are only a few months old." My heart started racing. No one had ever noticed the old breaks before. "There's more," she continued. "The pattern of these breaks, they're consistent with defensive wounds. Like someone grabbing and twisting your arms repeatedly over time." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Please," I whispered, "if you say anything, she'll..." "She'll what?" Dr. Rivera asked gently. "Hurt you worse." "Maddie, she's already escalating. These breaks are getting more severe. If this continues..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. "Your father," she said carefully, "does he?" "No," I replied quickly. "He just doesn't see it. Doesn't want to see it. He always says she didn't mean it, that I'm clumsy, that I provoke her." Dr. Rivera's jaw tightened. "That makes him complicit," she said. "And legally, I cannot send you back to that house." She reached for the phone on the wall, and I knew with sudden clarity that my life was about to change forever. "Please," I tried one last time. "They'll be so angry." "Listen to me," Dr. Rivera said firmly. "What happens next will be difficult. But if you go back there, I'm looking at x-rays that tell me you might not survive another accident. As your doctor, I'm legally required to report this, but as someone who cares about keeping you alive..." She squeezed my hand. "I'm making this call because I refuse to let them hurt you again." As she dialed Child Protective Services, I heard Sarah's voice in the hallway, still playing the concerned stepmother. But for the first time in 3 years, her act wouldn't be enough to hide the truth. The evidence was there in black and white, written in my bones. The hospital room became a fortress of activity. 2 police officers stationed themselves outside my door while Detective Morgan, a compact woman with steel gray hair, Photograph the bruises that mottled my arms. 4 years of this? She asked, documenting a particularly dark handprint on my upper arm. Since Dad married her, I confirmed. It started small. Pinches, slaps. Then it got worse. And your father? I stared at my hospital blanket. He started working longer hours. Said I was being difficult, that I needed to try harder to make things work. Dr. Rivera returned with a child welfare worker named Ms. Torres. Their faces were grim. Your stepmother is demanding to take you home, Ms. Torres said. She's threatening legal action. Of course she is, I muttered. She's always so careful to seem perfect in public. Not careful enough this time, Detective Morgan interjected, reviewing the x-rays. Dr. Rivera, can you walk us through these breaks? The doctor pointed to various shadows on the films. This spiral fracture is today's. Here's a healed break from approximately 3 months ago, another from 6 months back. The pattern suggests systematic abuse, escalating in severity. A commotion erupted in the hallway. Sarah's voice carried through the door, hitting me like ice water. This is ridiculous. I've been nothing but good to that ungrateful child. James, tell them. Let me talk to my daughter. Dad's voice joined in. There's been a misunderstanding. Detective Morgan moved to block the door. Mr. Patterson, your wife is being arrested for child abuse, and you're being charged as an accessory. The silence that followed was deafening. Arrested? Dad's voice cracked. But she didn't mean. Don't, Detective Morgan cut him off. Don't you dare say she didn't mean it. These x-rays show years of intentional abuse. You either knew and did nothing, or you willfully ignored it. Either way, you failed to protect your child. Miss Torres sat beside my bed, speaking softly as the chaos continued outside. We have a foster family ready. They're experienced with trauma cases. You'll be safe there. Foster care. The reality of what was happening finally hit me. But what about school? My things. We'll send officers to collect your belongings, she assured me. And you'll stay in the same school district, but you cannot go back to that house. Through the window in the door, I watched as Sarah was handcuffed. Her perfect mask finally cracked. You little bitch, she screamed. After everything I've done for you. Dad just stood there, looking lost. Maddie, he called out weakly. Tell them the truth. Tell them it was accidents. Dr. Rivera stepped between them and my door. The truth is in her x-rays, Mr. Patterson. Every break, every accident you ignored. It's all documented right here. As they were led away, I heard Sarah start to cry, playing victim to the end. But her tears couldn't erase the evidence of what she'd done to me. Later that night, alone in my hospital room, I finally let myself break down. Ms. Torres found me sobbing. It's okay to feel confused, she said, sitting beside me. They're your family. That's the worst part, I whispered. Dad was supposed to protect me, but he protected her instead. Adults who enable abuse often convince themselves they're keeping the peace, she explained. But peace at the expense of a child's safety isn't peace at all. A police officer entered with a small duffel bag. We collected some of your clothes and personal items, she said. We also found these. She handed me a stack of notebooks, my private journals documenting every accident, every lie, every time Dad chose not to see. These will help build the case, Detective Morgan said, joining us. You've been incredibly brave, Maddie, but I need you to be brave a little longer. Will you testify? I looked at my freshly casted arm, thinking of all the breaks that came before it, of all the times I'd wanted to speak up but couldn't. Yes, I said firmly, I'll testify. Dr. Rivera came in for a final check before her shift ended. The foster family will be here in the morning, she said. They're good people, Maddie, and they won't hurt you. How can you be sure? Because I've worked with them before, she said, and because this time you have all of us watching out for you. As night fell over the hospital, I wrote in a new journal Ms. Torres had given me. Not about breaks or bruises this time, but about hope. About what it felt like to finally be believed. Sarah had broken my bones, but she hadn't broken my spirit. Dad had ignored the truth, but he couldn't ignore it anymore. For the first time in 4 years, I didn't have to pretend. Tomorrow would bring changes, challenges, and probably more tears. But it would also bring something I'd almost forgotten existed: safety. 8 months later, I stood in the courthouse hallway, my new foster mother Karen beside me. The preliminary hearings had been brutal, but today was different. Today was about ending this chapter of my life. Remember, my victim advocate said, you only have to tell the truth. Your X-rays and journals speak volumes. Inside the courtroom, Sarah sat with her lawyer, her perfect mask now cracked and worn after months in custody. Dad sat separately with his own attorney, looking aged and defeated. Neither would meet my eyes. When I took the stand, the prosecutor guided me through my testimony methodically. I described each accident, each cover-up, each time Dad chose willful blindness over my safety. My journals provided dates, details, and patterns that couldn't be explained away. And this final incident, the prosecutor asked, "What happened?" I hadn't dried the dishes to her standards, I said, my voice steady. Sarah grabbed my arm and twisted until it broke. When Dad came home, she said I fell, like always. And your father's response? He said she didn't mean it. That's what he always said. During cross-examination, Sarah's lawyer tried to paint me as a troubled teen making false accusations, but he couldn't explain away the X-rays or the documented pattern of injuries. Dad's lawyer attempted a different approach, claiming he was also a victim of Sarah's manipulation, but the journals detailed every time he'd witnessed the aftermath of her abuse and chosen to look away. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours. Sarah was sentenced to 12 years for aggravated child abuse. Dad received 5 years for criminal negligence and child endangerment. Both were ordered to pay for my ongoing medical care and therapy. As they were led away, Dad finally looked at me. "Maddie," he called out, "I'm sorry. I should have protected you." "Yes," I replied, my voice breaking slightly. "You should have." Outside the courthouse, Karen hugged me tightly. Over the past months, she and her husband Tom had shown me what a real family looked like. No walking on eggshells, no hidden bruises, no lies about accidents. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I think I will be," I answered truthfully. Dr. Rivera was waiting by her car. She testified as an expert witness and had kept in touch throughout my recovery. "Your latest X-rays show good healing," she said. "But I'm more impressed by your emotional healing." She was right. Through therapy and the support of my foster family, I'd learned that the abuse wasn't my fault, that I deserved to feel safe in my own home. "I've been thinking," I told her. "I want to become a doctor, like you, to help other kids who can't speak up." She smiled. "I think you'd be excellent at it. You already have the most important qualification. You know how to look beyond the surface and see the truth." That evening, Karen and Tom hosted a small celebration dinner. My favorite teachers came, along with Ms. Torres, Detective Morgan, and my victim advocate. People who had believed me, fought for me, and helped me find my voice. "We have something to tell you," Karen said during dessert. "If you're interested, Tom and I would like to adopt you." I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. "Adopt me?" "Only if you want to," Tom added quickly. "We know you're 16, and you might prefer to just stay in foster care until college. But we want you to know you have a permanent home with us, if you choose it." Tears welled up in my eyes, happy tears this time. "I'd like that," I whispered. Later in my room, my real room, not the prison it had been in Sarah's house, I wrote in my journal. Not about pain or fear anymore, but about future plans. Medical school. Helping others. Building a life where I was safe and valued. Sarah had tried to break me, one bone at a time. Dad had enabled it through his silence, but they had failed. My broken bones had healed stronger, and so had I. The next morning, I joined Karen for breakfast before school. No tension, no fear, no checking for triggers that might spark violence. Just a normal morning with someone who had chosen to be my mother in all the ways that mattered. "Ready for your biology test?" she asked, passing me the orange juice. "Ready," I confirmed. First step toward medical school. She smiled, and I saw what I'd always wanted from Sarah and Dad: real love, real protection, real support. My arm had long since healed, but the real healing had happened in my heart. The X-rays that had saved me now sat in an evidence locker, proof of what I had survived. But they didn't define me anymore. I was no longer the girl with broken bones and silent screams. I was a future doctor, a daughter by choice rather than birth, and a survivor who had found her voice. And that voice would never be silenced again. Hi, I'm Rachel Morgan, 29, and until recently, I was a corporate lawyer at Anderson & Pierce. Not just any lawyer, I was the youngest partner in the firm's history. But my sister-in-law, Emma, decided my success was a personal attack on her perfect little world. You know the type, sweet as sugar to your face, while sharpening the knife for your back. That's Emma. She married my brother, Michael, right out of college, never worked a day because family comes first, and couldn't stand the idea that her husband's little sister might outshine her. The unraveling began at one of our Sunday dinners at my parents' house. We'd started the tradition 3 years ago, after Dad got sick, and it was one of the few times we all came together. That particular evening, I shared the big news. I'd made partner. Dad's face lit up, pride shining through the exhaustion the cancer had brought. "That's my girl," he said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "I always knew you'd make it, surpassing even your old man." I barely had time to bask in his words before noticing Emma's reaction. Her fork froze mid-air, her knuckles whitening around the handle. "How wonderful," she said, her smile tight, her voice syrupy with false cheer. "Though I imagine it's hard, spending so much time at the office. Don't you worry about missing out on having a real family life." "Emma," Michael warned softly, but she just laughed, a tinkling, grating sound that always made my skin crawl. "Oh, I'm just concerned for Rachel," she said. "We all know how demanding legal work can be. Look at Uncle James, 2 divorces and kids who barely know him. Career success has its price." Dad cleared his throat, ready to step in, but a coughing fit overtook him. Mom rushed to his side, and Emma seized the distraction. "Rachel, dear," she continued, leaning forward with that cloying smile, "you're not getting any younger. Wouldn't Daddy love to see you settle down before, well?" She trailed off, gesturing vaguely toward Dad, who was still catching his breath. I clenched my fists, but kept my voice steady. "My career doesn't rule out a family, Emma. It just means that when I choose to start one, I'll be able to support them on my own." "Of course," Emma said, her grin sharpening. "Independence is so admirable. But there's something special about being fully devoted to family, don't you think? Michael's career supports us beautifully, doesn't it, darling?" Michael squirmed in his seat, clearly uncomfortable, but before I could respond, Dad straightened and pushed back his chair. "Rachel, come to my study after dinner," he said, his voice firm despite his weakened state. "We need to talk." Emma's eyes narrowed, though she quickly masked it with another saccharine smile. She excused herself during dessert, claiming she needed the bathroom. Later, I learned she'd use that time to make a phone call that would change everything. In Dad's study, he lowered himself into the worn leather chair where he'd spent countless nights working on case files. "Rachel," he began, his tone solemn, "I'm proud of you, not just for making partner, but for everything you've accomplished on your own." My throat tightened as I nodded. Moments like these reminded me how little time we had left with him. "I've been thinking," he said, pulling a thick envelope from his desk drawer. "The firm I built, Anderson and Pierce, was always meant to be a legacy. When I merged it with Pierce's practice and stepped down, I kept a significant ownership stake. I want you to have it." I blinked, stunned. "Dad, I don't know what to say." "You've earned it," he said firmly, "not just through your work, but because you understand what it means to build something that lasts. Michael has his own path, and that's fine. But you have the same fire I did." Unbeknownst to us, Emma was standing just outside the door, phone in hand, recording every word. She already had a plan, one designed to dismantle everything I'd worked for. But we'll get to that soon enough. First, you need to understand what came next, how Emma's manipulation and betrayal set the stage for the battle of my life. She wasn't just after money or power. She wanted to erase me entirely from my own family's story. For a while, she almost succeeded. The next few weeks blurred together, long days at work, longer nights at the hospital. Dad was slipping away, and Emma's manipulations were only becoming more brazen. Family dinners suddenly conflicted with my meetings. Comments about me abandoning Dad for work grew sharper. And somehow, I was always the last to know about changes to hospital visiting hours. Then came the moment that should have tipped me off that Emma's game was bigger than I realized. "Rachel, where were you yesterday?" Mom's voice trembled over the phone. "Your father was asking for you. Emma said she called you 3 times. I froze mid-sentence in a contract review. "What?" I never got any calls from Emma. She showed us her phone log. Mom said, her voice brittle. "Don't lie to me, Rachel. Not now, not with your father like this." I scrambled to pull up my call history. "Mom, I swear I did." "Just stop," she sighed. "Just try to be here more. Emma's been such a blessing, practically living at the hospital. Maybe you could take a few days off." What I didn't know then was that Emma had been using a burner phone, forging a paper trail to make it look like she called me repeatedly. She was weaving a narrative, one where I was the neglectful daughter too consumed by work to care about her dying father. 2 weeks later, my phone buzzed with urgent messages during a high-stakes client meeting. Emma, Dad's taken a turn. Come quickly. Michael. Where are you? He's asking for you. Mom, please hurry. I rushed out, my heart pounding. But when I arrived, Dad was sleeping peacefully, his vitals stable. False alarm, Emma chirped, barely looking up from her phone. He was a bit agitated earlier, but he's fine now. Did you leave something important for this? Oh, I'm so sorry. I stared at her, fury bubbling under my skin. My client would be furious, but she had the audacity to add, family should always come first, shouldn't it? That night, I lost the client, but worse was yet to come. 3 days later, Dad actually did take a turn for the worse. This time, no messages came, no calls. I found out at midnight when Michael's broken voice reached me. Rachel, Dad's gone. Where were you? We tried to reach you for hours. My world tilted. What? No one contacted me. I didn't get. Don't, he snapped, his voice cold. Emma showed us she texted you. Mom's devastated. How could you do this? I collapsed to the floor, frantically scrolling through my phone. Nothing. No texts, no calls. Later, I learned Emma had used Dad's phone during her visits to block my number from everyone's contacts. A small trick with devastating consequences. At the funeral, Emma played her role flawlessly, the grieving daughter-in-law who'd done everything she could to keep the family together. I stood on the sidelines, drowning in judgmental glances from relatives and friends. But Emma wasn't done. A week after the funeral, we gathered for the will reading. I sat in numb silence as the lawyer began, but Emma quickly interjected. Before we continued, she said softly, pulling out her phone, "There's something everyone needs to hear." She played a recording of the conversation in Dad's study the night I made partner, only it was doctored, cut to make it sound like I was demanding my inheritance and threatening to abandon the family if I didn't get what I wanted. There's more, Emma added, her voice trembling with mock concern. Rachel's been planning this for months, taking advantage of Daddy's condition to manipulate him. She unveiled screenshots of fake text messages, edited emails, and financial records supposedly tying me to suspicious transfers from Dad's accounts. The room erupted. Mom burst into tears. Michael wouldn't even look at me. The lawyer cleared his throat, his face grim. Given this evidence, he said, and the codicil Mr. Morgan added to his will, stating that any heir found guilty of undue influence would be disinherited. He paused, his eyes heavy with pity. All assets intended for Rachel Morgan will be redistributed according to the secondary provisions. I sat there, hollowed out, as everything crumbled, my inheritance, my father's stake in the firm, even my position at Anderson and Pierce. Emma had destroyed it all. Or so she thought. What Emma didn't realize was that I hadn't spent years as a corporate lawyer without learning how to protect myself. I had my own records, and I was about to use them. For the next 3 months, I played the part of the defeated. Let Emma bask in her triumph. I went to work, kept my head down, and watched as she wormed her way deeper into the family. Her latest move? Requesting my office at the firm, claiming it would help her manage Michael's inherited shares more efficiently. But while Emma was busy playing queen, I was quietly building my case. It started with Linda, Dad's secretary of 20 years, the same woman Emma dismissed as just another employee. Linda came to me one evening, her face pale, a USB drive clutched in her hand. Your father, she began hesitantly. He suspected something was wrong in his final months. He asked me to keep recording everything, just in case. The drive contained security footage from Dad's study, including the unedited version of our conversation the night I made partner. The version that proved my innocence. But it also revealed something more damning. Emma's late-night visits to Dad's office, rifling through his files and planting documents when she thought no one was watching. Then Trevor, the firm's 8th specialist, approached me one evening after work. Ms. Morgan, he said, shifting uncomfortably, I've been reviewing those financial records Mrs. Morgan submitted. Some things don't add up. Trevor had uncovered backdated entries and manipulated timestamps, all traced back to Emma's home computer. Her arrogance had been her downfall. Her system still backed up automatically to the firm's cloud storage. And then came the moment that sealed her fate. Rachel, Michael's voice was shaky when he called me. We need to talk. It's about Emma. I found something. Over coffee, he slid a folder across the table. Inside were bank statements, wire transfers, and receipts. She's been embezzling, Michael whispered, his hands trembling. Not just from the firm, she's drained Mom's accounts too. She said it was to streamline family finances during Dad's illness. But I placed my hand over his, steadying him. I know, Michael, and I have everything we need to prove it. The stage was set. At the next family dinner, Emma invited everyone. Mom, Michael, even board members from Anderson and Pierce, to announce her new role as family trustee. She stood at the head of the table, all smiles, raising her glass in triumph. Before we celebrate, I said, rising to my feet, there are some people you should meet. On cue, Linda walked in, followed by Trevor and a forensic accountant I'd hired. One by one, they presented their evidence, the unedited recordings, the forged documents, the financial manipulation. The security footage showed Emma breaking into Dad's office late at night, planting the very documents she used to frame me. Emma's composure shattered. This is a lie, she stammered, her face pale. Rachel's making this up. Like the phone logs? I asked, nodding to Trevor, who displayed proof of her blocking scheme. Or the doctored financial records? The thing about digital evidence, Emma, is that it always leaves a trail. The room erupted. Board members demanded an emergency session. Mom sobbed with anger, devastated by Emma's betrayal. Michael sat in stunned silence, twisting his wedding ring. By the end of the night, Emma's empire of lies had crumbled. Justice was swift. Emma faced criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement. The will was invalidated, and Dad's estate was divided fairly. Michael filed for divorce. Under my leadership, the firm weathered the scandal and came back stronger. It took time for Mom to fully reconcile with me, the guilt of her misplaced trust weighing heavily on her. But one evening, as we shared a quiet dinner, she said, "Your father would be so proud of you, not just for proving your innocence, but for how you did it. No shortcuts. No revenge. Just the truth." I keep Dad's photo on my desk now, in the office Emma once tried to steal. Some nights, when the city is quiet, I imagine him smiling at me, his approval as clear as if he were still here. And Emma? Last I heard, she was facing 5 to 10 years. I couldn't resist sending her one final message before her sentencing. Family should always come first, right? Sometimes karma doesn't need help finding its way. But here's why I wonder, if you were in my position, would you have waited to gather the evidence, or would you have struck back sooner? Maintaining your integrity while fighting for the truth is no easy feat. I'd love to hear your thoughts. The funeral home was cloaked in silence, broken only by the soft hum of whispers and the occasional muffled sob. I stood near the door, my hands gripping my purse as I watched my siblings encircle Dad's casket. They hovered like vultures, faces painted with grief that felt more performative than genuine. Rachel's sharp eyes found me across the room. She leaned in to whisper to Mark, who glanced over his shoulder with that all-too-familiar expression of contempt. A moment later, he was striding toward me, Rachel trailing behind, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "You need to leave," Mark said, his voice low but firm. "You're not welcome here." I refused to flinch, meeting his glare head-on. He was my father, too. Rachel let out a cold, humorless laugh. "Really? Where were you when he needed surgery last year? Off living your perfect little life while we handled everything." My chest tightened, but I held my ground. "I offered to help. Both of you told me he didn't want my money." Mark stepped closer, his face darkening. "You don't get to rewrite history. You abandoned him. You abandoned us. So just go." He grabbed my arm, his grip like iron, and before I could protest, security was at my side, escorting me out like I was the intruder in my own family. As I passed the casket, I stole one last glance at Dad's lifeless form, the weight in my chest suffocating. They didn't know. None of them knew. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and this is the story of how my father's death unraveled the lies that bound our family and the truth I had to fight to reveal. I wasn't always the outcast. Growing up, I was the steady one. While Rachel basked in her role as the eldest, charming her way into everything she wanted, and Mark thrived as the baby, playing the favorite, I was the reliable middle child. The responsible one. Boring, Rachel used to say with a sneer. Every Saturday morning, I joined Dad at his small accounting firm, sitting beside him at the old desk while he patiently taught me the business. "You've got a gift for numbers, Sarah," he'd say, his eyes crinkling behind wire-rimmed glasses, "just like your old man." Those mornings were ours, quiet, filled with the comforting hum of the ancient desktop and the rich aroma of his black coffee. They were moments I cherished, though I didn't realize then how they'd one day become weapons in my siblings' arsenal of resentment. When Mom passed away, everything changed. I was 24, fresh out of business school, juggling the demands of a new career. The night she died, I rushed home to find Dad sitting in the dark, clutching her favorite sweater. "I couldn't save her," he whispered, his voice trembling. "All those years working, saving, and it wasn't enough." That night, I made a silent promise. I would never let money be the reason we lost someone again. I threw myself into my career, working long hours and saving every bonus, building a safety net for my family, though they never knew about it. Rachel and Mark, of course, saw things differently. To them, I was the selfish one, too busy chasing success to care about Dad. They stayed in our hometown, painting themselves as the dutiful children, while quietly bleeding him dry. I discovered their betrayal by accident. One of Dad's old clients called me, concerned about irregularities in his accounts. A weekend spent combing through his financials revealed the ugly truth. Rachel had opened credit cards in his name, maxing them out on shopping sprees and vacations. Mark had convinced him to co-sign a loan for a failed business venture, leaving Dad saddled with over $200,000 in debt. When I confronted them, they turned it back on me. "At least we're here," Rachel snapped. "You don't even visit unless it's convenient for you." "You don't get to judge us," Mark added. "You left. We stayed." Dad, ever the peacemaker, refused to hear it. "They're going through a rough patch," he'd say, brushing off their actions. "Family has to stick together." So I found another way. I created an anonymous trust to pay off Dad's debts, covering the bills without anyone knowing it was me. For 2 years, I kept our family afloat, silently watching Rachel and Mark take credit for managing Dad's finances. Then came the diagnosis: Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 6 months to live at best. I dove into research, desperate to find options that might extend his time. But Rachel and Mark shut me out, claiming they knew what was best. The doctors said treatment would only make him suffer more. Rachel told me, her voice dripping with condescension. "You're not the only one who loves him," Mark added. "We've been here. You haven't." They blocked me from speaking to his doctors, changed his phone number, and painted me as the estranged daughter trying to interfere. By the time I hired a lawyer to fight for medical proxy, it was too late. Dad died on a Tuesday morning. I found out through Rachel's Facebook post, complete with a curated photo of the loving family surrounding him in his final moments. Which brings me back to the funeral. As security ushered me out, I clutched my purse tighter, feeling the weight of the envelope Dad had given me 3 months earlier. "I know what you've done," he'd said, sliding it across his desk during one of our final conversations. "And I need you to know something." The rest of that conversation was a blur, overshadowed by grief and the chaos that followed. But now, as I stepped out into the cold, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever was in that envelope, it would change everything. I just had to find the courage to use it. The first warm rays of sunlight streamed through my apartment windows as I sat at the kitchen table, the envelope trembling in my hands. For 3 months, I carried it everywhere, unopened, like some unbearable secret. Dad's handwriting, shaky but deliberate, stared back at me. "For Sarah, open after." I broke the seal, my breath catching as I pulled out the contents. A letter, a USB drive, and a small brass key. The key was unmistakable, the one to Dad's safety deposit box. My fingers brushed the USB drive, but it was the letter that drew my attention first. His words, written just a week before our final meeting, spilled onto the page. "My dearest Sarah, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. The cancer is moving faster than the doctors expected, but that's not why I'm writing. I need to confess something that's weighed on me for years. I failed as a father. I enabled Rachel and Mark's worst instincts, every manipulative request, every reckless decision, because it was easier than setting boundaries. I told myself it was love, but the truth is I was too afraid of conflict, too ashamed of the time I spent working instead of being present when you were all young. But you were different. I pushed you harder because I knew you could handle it. That wasn't fair to you, and it created a rift I fear can never be repaired. What your siblings don't know, what no one knows except my lawyer, is that I've been keeping records. Every fraudulent credit card, every forged signature, every doctored bank statement. It's all documented on the USB drive enclosed. The key is to my safety deposit box at First National Bank. Inside, you'll find my real will, updated 6 months ago when I discovered what Rachel and Mark had done. Mr. Patterson, my lawyer, holds the original copy. Now I leave the choice to you. You can expose the truth. The will stipulates that Rachel and Mark must repay every dollar they've stolen before receiving any inheritance. Mr. Patterson has instructions to involve the authorities if they refuse. Or you can let it go. Destroy everything and let them believe they've won. I'll understand either way. I need you to know one last thing, Sarah. Those Saturday mornings in the office were never just about teaching you business. They were the highlight of my week. You weren't just my daughter. You were my confidant, my greatest pride. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you more. I'm sorry I let them push you away. Most of all, I'm sorry I waited until it was too late to do the right thing. Whatever you decide, know that I love you, and I am prouder of you than words can express. Love always, Dad. The letter slipped from my hands, fluttering onto the table like a fragile leaf. The morning sun had risen fully now, casting long, golden streaks across the room. My coffee sat untouched cold, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I reached for the USB drive with trembling fingers, plugging it into my laptop. The screen lit up with folders, meticulously labeled by year and type. Credit cards, loans, bank statements, recordings. My stomach churned as I clicked through the files. There it was, everything. Copies of fraudulent credit card applications, forged signatures, and video clips of Rachel and Mark discussing their schemes in Dad's office. Even emails where they mocked Dad's naivety. The evidence was airtight, damning enough to not only reclaim what they'd stolen but have them charged with fraud and elder abuse. I sat back, staring at the screen. With one call to Mr. Patterson, I could set the wheels of justice in motion. I could make them pay for what they'd done to Dad, to our family. But then memories surfaced, unbidden. Rachel at 16, showing me how to apply mascara before my first date. Mark at 12, sneaking into my bed during thunderstorms, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. There was a time we were siblings, before the resentment, before the lies. My phone buzzed on the table, pulling me back to the present. A text from Rachel. Meeting with the estate lawyer tomorrow at 10. Try to show up this time if you care at all about Dad's wishes. I clenched my jaw, rereading her words, feeling the familiar sting of her condescension. A second buzz followed, this time from Mark. Hope you're happy with yourself, making a scene at Dad's funeral. Real classy. The anger flared, hot and sharp. But beneath it, there was something else. Doubt. What would justice look like? Was it exposing them for the frauds they were, or was it something else entirely? I stood abruptly, grabbing my keys and the small brass one from Dad's envelope. Before I made any decisions, I needed to see what else he had left behind. The real will might change everything, or confirm what I already suspected. The drive to First National Bank felt surreal, like navigating through a haze. Morning traffic blurred around me, the hum of the city distant and muted. Dad's voice echoed in my mind, soft but certain. The choice is yours. The bank lobby was serene when I arrived, the early morning stillness broken only by the hushed murmurs of a few customers and the soft hum of fluorescent lights. The safety deposit box room felt like a world apart, quiet, almost reverent, the thick walls meeting the sounds outside. Take all the time you need, Ms. Mitchell, the bank manager said as he handed me the key. His footsteps faded down the hallway, leaving me alone with the cold metallic box that held the final piece of Dad's puzzle. My hands trembled as I turned the key and lifted the lid. Inside were 2 items, a thick envelope and a small leather journal that made my breath catch. I hadn't seen it in years, but I recognized it instantly. Dad had carried that journal everywhere, scribbling notes about work, family, and ideas for the future. I opened the envelope first. The will was exactly as Dad had described in his letter. Rachel and Mark would inherit nothing unless they repaid every cent they'd stolen, plus interest. But there was more. A second document outlined the full extent of Dad's estate, far beyond what any of us had imagined. The modest accounting firm I remembered as a child had quietly flourished into a multi-million-dollar empire. He had invested shrewdly, purchased properties, and built a fortune he'd never shared with anyone. What my siblings believed was a humble inheritance was actually a legacy that could change our lives forever, if we were willing to face the truth. But it was the journal that truly unraveled me. I flipped it open to a random page, the familiar scrawl bringing his voice back to life. Asterisk Sarah came by the office today. She thinks I don't know about the trust she set up. How she's been quietly paying off Rachel and Mark's debts. My brilliant, compassionate daughter, always cleaning up the messes they make without asking for recognition. Just like her mother. I should stop her. Tell her to let them deal with the consequences of their actions. But watching her carry this family, even after the way they've treated her, it gives me hope. Maybe when I'm gone, she'll be strong enough to do what I couldn't. Help them grow up. Asterisk. Tears blurred my vision as I turned page after page, each entry revealing the depth of Dad's struggles. His regrets, his love for us, his pride in me. The final entry, dated just days before his death, broke me entirely. I made the hardest decision of my life today, changed my will, documented everything. Sarah will hate having this burden placed on her, but she's the only one strong enough to bear it. Rachel and Mark need to learn. And Sarah needs to know she was never alone. The journal slipped from my hands, landing softly on the table as my phone buzzed. A reminder about tomorrow's meeting with the estate lawyer. For the first time in months, I felt clarity. Dad had trusted me to do what he couldn't, and I finally knew what I had to do. The next morning, I arrived at Mr. Patterson's office 10 minutes early. Rachel and Mark were already there, their glares sharp enough to cut. I sat across from them, my back straight and my resolve firm. Now that everyone's here, Mr. Patterson began, we can review the terms of your father's will. Rachel rolled her eyes. We already know what it says. The house and business get split 3 ways. Let's just get this over with. Mr. Patterson's gaze shifted to me. I gave a small nod. Actually, he said, pulling out a document, this is your father's updated will, executed 6 months ago. What followed was like watching a storm unravel in slow motion. As Mr. Patterson detailed the conditions, repaying stolen money, the hidden fortune, the consequences of noncompliance, Rachel and Mark's faces shifted from disbelief to fury. This is insane, Mark erupted, slamming his fist on the table. Sarah must have manipulated him into changing it. You can't prove any of this, Rachel snapped, though her voice quivered. I reached into my bag and set the USB drive on the table. Actually, I can. Dad kept meticulous records of everything. Their expressions collapsed into silence as Mr. Patterson played the recordings and presented the evidence. 2 hours later, the room was filled with the weight of realization. You have 2 options, Mr. Patterson concluded. Contest the will, in which case this evidence will go to the authorities, or accept your father's terms. Rachel was crying now, real tears for once, while Mark stared at the floor, his anger replaced by defeat. That's when I spoke up. There's a 3rd option. I pulled out a set of documents I'd spent the night drafting. I'm offering to set up a structured repayment plan. You'll both work at the firm, learning the business from the ground up, just like I did. Every dollar you earn will go toward repaying the debt. Once it's cleared, you'll receive your inheritances. This way, you can earn back not just the money, but something more important, Dad's trust. Mark looked up, his voice hoarse. Why would you do this, after everything we've done? I thought of Dad's journal, of his faith in me, and the family we once were. Because Dad believed in second chances, I said softly, and so do I. It wasn't easy. Rachel and Mark resisted at first, testing boundaries and pushing limits, but slowly they began to change. A year later, I sat in Dad's old office, watching through the window as Rachel explained tax forms to a client with surprising patience. Mark's laughter echoed from the break room, where he was organizing a charity drive. Dad's journal rested on my desk, its pages a testament to how far we'd come. On the last page, I had added my own words. Asterisk, you were right, Dad. Sometimes love means making a hard choice. It means giving people the chance to change, even when they don't believe in themselves. We're not perfect, but we're a family again. And I think you'd be proud. Asterisk. I closed the journal and looked out at the city skyline, the morning sun casting its warm light over everything. Somewhere, I like to think, Dad was watching, finally at peace. Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Chen, a 29-year-old pediatric nurse at Memorial Hospital. People say time heals all wounds, but as I sit here in my tiny apartment, staring at the crumpled wedding invitation on my coffee table, I can't help but wonder if some betrayals cut too deep to ever heal. The elegant calligraphy on the card, Olivia's perfectly polished handwriting, taunts me. 6 months ago, those same hands forged my signature on inheritance documents, stealing what little security my late grandfather left me. Olivia, my stepsister, the same woman who stood beside me on my wedding day, smiling as she secretly orchestrated my heartbreak. Family comes first, she used to say, but I realize now she meant her version of family, the one where I never truly belonged. Let me take you back to the beginning. 3 years ago, when Dad married Catherine, I was genuinely happy for him. After losing Mom to cancer when I was 12, he deserved another chance at love. Catherine was warm and kind, the sort of woman who could light up a room, and her daughter Olivia, well, she was dazzling. Tall, confident, and impeccably put together. Olivia was everything I wasn't. A high-end event planner with a thriving career, she lived a life straight out of the pages of Vogue. At our parents' wedding, she swept me into a world of glitter and glamour, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she air-kissed my cheeks. "Rachel, darling," she cooed, grabbing my hands like we were long-lost friends. "We're sisters now. I just know we're going to be so close." Her words seemed genuine at the time, and I wanted to believe them. When Nathan and I got engaged, Olivia insisted on being my maid of honor. "What are sisters for?" she'd say, tossing her designer bag onto my couch as we flipped through bridal magazines. "Trust me, I do this for a living. Your wedding will be absolutely stunning." And it was stunning in a way, a perfectly curated disaster. Looking back, the red flags were everywhere. The way Olivia subtly criticized my choices, my dress, my flowers, even the music, with that syrupy smile of hers. The way she conveniently scheduled vendor meetings during my hospital shifts, making sure I was too busy to notice what she was really doing. But the night before the wedding, her plan unfolded in full. I was double-checking my overnight bag when Nathan texted, "We need to talk. It's urgent." At our favorite coffee shop, he sat pale and silent, holding a stack of screenshots. "Rachel," he began, his voice trembling, "please tell me these aren't real." The messages were damning. Intimate exchanges between me and Dr. James, one of the attending physicians at Memorial. Flirty texts, plans to meet in on-call rooms, things I'd never written. "Nathan, this isn't me," I cried. "These are fake." But then he slid his phone across the table, showing me photos. Edited but not obviously so. They showed me and Dr. James in compromising positions, the lighting wrong, the proportions off, but still convincing enough to spark doubt. "Olivia sent these," Nathan said. His voice cracked. "She thought I deserved to know before tomorrow." That's when my phone buzzed with an onslaught of notifications. The same photos and texts had been sent to our wedding guests. My dad, Nathan's family, my colleagues. Everyone. Nathan didn't even look at me as he stood. "I can't do this," he said quietly. "I need time to think." When I got home, Olivia was waiting. She lounged in the living room with Catherine, a glass of wine in hand, looking utterly unbothered. "Oh, sweetie," she said, her voice dripping with Fox concern. I had to tell Nathan. He deserved to know the truth. What kind of sister would I be if I didn't? "You know, those are fake," I said, my voice trembling. "Why would you do this?" Her smile turned icy. "Are they fake, Rachel? Because nobody else seems to think so. Dad's devastated, by the way." Poor thing. I turned to Catherine, searching for an ally, but she just shook her head, her expression weary. "Rachel, honey, maybe it's for the best. Nathan deserves someone who fits." That was the moment I realized I was on my own. Olivia wasn't satisfied with ruining my wedding. She had bigger plans. And as I learned later, the forged inheritance documents were already in motion. She wasn't just stealing my family and my future. She was taking everything. 6 months after my wedding fell apart, I was piecing my life back together one fragile shard at a time. Dr. James had come forward to confirm the photos and messages were fake, but the damage had already been done. Nathan had moved to Seattle, leaving behind unanswered questions, and most of our mutual friends still viewed me with wary, lingering doubt. Work at the pediatric ward became my refuge, Immersing myself in the laughter of children was the only thing keeping me afloat. Then came the call that shattered the delicate peace I had rebuilt. Miss Chen. Mr. Harrison's voice, my grandfather's lawyer, was laced with unease. We need you to come to the office immediately. There's been a situation with your inheritance. I froze, gripping the phone tighter. My grandfather had passed away 2 months before Dad married Catherine, leaving me Creative Corner, his beloved vintage bookstore, and a trust fund. That bookstore was more than a business. It was my sanctuary, the place where Mom and I spent countless hours before she passed. Losing it was unthinkable. When I arrived at Mr. Harrison's office, Olivia was already there. She sat poised on a leather chair, her legs crossed elegantly, Louboutin heels glinting in the sunlight. Her silk blouse and diamond earrings practically screamed triumph. "Rachel, darling," she cooed, as if we were friends catching up over coffee. "Isn't this exciting?" Mr. Harrison cleared his throat, shuffling some papers. "Miss Chen, it seems there's been a change in the inheritance structure. We have documents signed by you 3 months ago, transferring ownership of Creative Corner and the trust fund to your stepsister." My heart stopped. "What?" I gasped. "I never signed anything." "Actually, you did," Olivia interjected with a syrupy smile, sliding a folder across the table. "Remember that day you were drowning in hospital paperwork? I came over to help, and you signed a few things without reading them. Silly girl." I stared at the papers, my signature staring back at me, mocking me. Every loop, every dotted I was identical to my handwriting. My stomach churned. "This is forgery," I snapped, my voice rising. "That's a serious accusation," Mr. Harrison said, glancing between us nervously. "The signatures have been verified by handwriting experts." Rachel's always had a flair for drama. Olivia sighed, feigning exasperation. "Honestly, this is for the best. Creative Corner needs someone with vision and modern business sense. And Rachel, well, you're a nurse. Bless your heart." "It's my bookstore." I shot back, anger burning through my shock. Those books were my mom's life. "Books are so passé," Olivia said breezily, her lips curving into a smirk. "I'm thinking of turning it into a chic cafe boutique. Maybe I'll name it Olives. Has a nice ring to it, don't you think?" I turned to Mr. Harrison, desperate. "My dad won't let this happen. He knows what that store means to me." Olivia let out a sharp laugh. "Dad, sweetie, he's the one who suggested I take over. After the unfortunate incident with Dr. James, he thinks you need time to, get your life together." Her words were like a slap. By the time I left the office, my world felt like it had been ripped apart all over again. That night, I sat on my living room floor, surrounded by photos of the bookstore, Mom reading to me in the cozy nook she decorated, Dad helping me sort through new arrivals. It felt like losing her all over again. My phone buzzed, breaking my reverie. It was Sarah, my best friend from nursing school. Just drove past Creative Corner. Her message read, "There's a coming soon. Olive's Boutique Cafe sign in the window. What's going on?" My hands shook as I called her, and within 20 minutes, Sarah was at my apartment, a bottle of wine in one hand and fire in her eyes. "This is insane," she said, pouring us both glasses. "We need to fight back." "How?" I asked helplessly, showing her the forged documents. "She's thought of everything." "Maybe not everything," Sarah said, her eyes narrowing. "Remember Tommy, your brother? The cybersecurity guy?" She nodded. "If anyone can prove Olivia faked those wedding photos and messages, it's him. And if she was sloppy with her digital tracks, he'll find them." The flicker of hope was almost too painful to hold onto. But we'd need access to her phone, her computer. Sarah cut me off with a sly grin. "Leave that to me. Olivia just posted about her luxury spa weekend. 3 days of digital detox. No phones allowed." As we started plotting, my phone buzzed again. A message from Nathan. My heart skipped a beat. "Saw the news about Creative Corner," it read. "This isn't you, Rach. I know you'd never give up your mom's legacy. And I've been thinking about those wedding photos. Something doesn't add up." I stared at the screen, my pulse racing. "The universe is sending you a lifeline," Sarah said firmly. "It's time to fight back." We didn't know it yet, but Olivia wasn't finished. Her next move would push me to the brink, testing every bond I had left, including the fragile glimmer of hope Nathan's message had sparked. The next week felt like a high-stakes game of chess, each move deliberate, every piece crucial. While Olivia indulged in her spa retreat, Sarah and I moved our plan into action. Tommy, working remotely, traced the doctored wedding photos to a high-end photo manipulation service. The payment trail led directly to Olivia's business account, but we needed more. The breakthrough came from an unexpected ally. Lisa, Olivia's assistant. She intercepted me outside the hospital one evening, glancing over her shoulder as if she were being followed. "Miss Chen," she said in a hushed tone, handing me a USB drive with trembling hands. "I found these while backing up Olivia's work computer. She'd kill me if she knew I saw them. But you deserve to know the truth." That night, Sarah and Tommy joined me to examine the drive's contents. What we uncovered made my stomach twist. There were emails between Olivia and a professional forger detailing how to replicate my signature. Screenshots of her coordinating with Catherine to convince Dad that I was unstable after the wedding disaster. And the most damning piece of all, a detailed proposal to sell Creative Corner to a luxury developer. She never planned to keep the store, Sarah realized, her voice shaky with fury. The cafe was just a smokescreen. She's selling out to build condos. She's destroying Mom's legacy, I whispered, gripping the USB like a lifeline. As I sat reeling, my phone buzzed. It was Nathan. "Can we meet? I'm back in town." The next afternoon, I found him waiting at our old coffee shop. He looked tired but determined. "I hired a private investigator after I left," he admitted. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The PI found links between Olivia and the photo editing service. "I know," I said quietly, sliding the USB across the table. "We have proof now." Nathan's hand covered mine. "Rachel, I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you from the start." Before I could respond, my phone lit up with a flurry of notifications. Olivia had returned early, and she knew Lisa had betrayed her. The text was as venomous as it was chilling. "You sneaky little bitch. Check your email. You have 1 hour to sign over the inheritance or I release these." Attached were doctored photos, me and Nathan at the coffee shop, manipulated to look like we were conspiring. Another showed Sarah entering Olivia's office, edited to resemble a break-in. "She's trying to frame us," I whispered, my throat tightening. "Not this time," Nathan said firmly. His PI was already surveilling Olivia, and Tommy quickly traced the email's origin. It was coming from Creative Corner. Sarah made a call to her cousin, a detective. And I called the one person who needed to see this with his own eyes. "Dad," I said, my voice trembling, "meet me at the bookstore. Please, it's important." When we arrived at Creative Corner, Olivia was inside with Catherine, her laptop open on Mom's old reading table. A thick developer's contract sprawled across the surface. "Perfect timing," Olivia sneered. "Are you ready to sign away your claims, sister dear?" "Actually," I said, holding up the USB, "I have something for you to sign. A confession." Her smile faltered. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I walked to the store's ancient computer and plugged in the USB, projecting its contents onto the wall. Emails appeared. Discussions of forged signatures, manipulated photos, and plans to dismantle the bookstore. Catherine's emails flashed next, detailing their schemes to discredit me. Catherine gasped, stepping back as Dad's face turned pale. "It's not what it looks like," she stammered. "Really?" Nathan's PI stepped forward, his camera recording. "Because it looks exactly like fraud. You set me up." Olivia lunged for her laptop, but before she could erase anything, Sarah's cousin, now officially on duty, stopped her. "Olivia Jackson," he said, pulling out a pair of handcuffs, "you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy." As Olivia was led away, Catherine broke down, spilling every detail. How Olivia orchestrated the wedding scandal, manipulated the inheritance, and convinced Dad I was unfit to manage my own life. Dad turned to me, his face heavy with regret. "Rachel," I let her cloud my judgment. "Your mother always said love means seeing the truth, even when it hurts. I failed you." Tears streamed down my face as he pulled me into his arms. "You didn't fail me, Dad. She fooled us all." Justice came swiftly. Olivia and Catherine faced legal consequences, and the inheritance was restored. Creative Corner didn't just survive, it flourished. Nathan and I worked together to renovate the space, preserving Mom's cozy reading corner while adding a small coffee bar. Sarah started hosting children's storytime on weekends, her laughter filling the once quiet aisles. 6 months later, I stood in that same reading corner, this time in a simple white dress. No grand wedding, no pretenses, just close friends, my dad and Nathan, promising to always trust and fight for each other. Now when the store quiets at night, I sit in Mom's old chair and reflect. Olivia's greed nearly destroyed everything I loved, but it taught me something important. Family isn't about shared blood or names on paper. It's the people who fight for you, who see the truth when no one else does, and who help you protect what matters most.